let's talk about some prosperity and abundance magic. Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about prosperity and abundance magic, specifically using cards of all sorts in prosperity and abundance magic, how they can be useful, how they can be used to facilitate those sorts of types of magic. So for me personally, prosperity and abundance magic are like siblings. I wouldn't say they're always interchangeable, but I would say the two terms for me at times can be interchangeable. I would also like to say that when we think of prosperity and abundance magic, I do know that there are connotations of the material world, things like monetary gain, seeking out career advancement, finding things like home and security financially, and living spaces, and all of that. So I know that there are those connotations. I'm talking about prosperity and abundance magic a little bit more, I would say broadly, a little bit more abstractly. So while I think that using those things for material purposes and in the world to have a sort of gain, I think that that's valuable and useful, and we are going to be talking about those sorts of things. I'm also going to be talking about prosperity and abundance in more, I wouldn't say deep and meaningful ways, but I would say more personal ways. Things like emotions and heart-centered prosperity and abundance, finding ourselves, feeling secure within ourselves. So all of that falls, to me at least, under the umbrella of prosperity and abundance magic. So prosperity stemming from the ideas of something prospering, something doing well. So when we're talking about magic that is of the prosperity variety, we're trying to get something to do well, to have it start somewhere and to grow. So it's almost like a spell of growth in a way, a growth of finances, a growth of love, a growth of self. So prosperity, I think, is more of that type of magic, whereas abundance is where we would like a lot of something. So where prosperity, really there needs to be this root or starting point from which we hope something to do well. Abundance is where we hope for quantity or plenitude of a given thing. So we want abundance magic in terms of maybe life experience. We can use something in that regard. We want abundance in money or finances to some regard, not in an excessive way that is potentially harmful or detracts from our experience, but we do want there to be an abundance. We want an abundance in security. We want an abundance in self-love. So in that way, they can be interchangeable, but I do think there are nuanced differences between the two. So I'm always using cards for magic and in magic, and I'm going to go through a few examples, but I do want to first start the conversation on using cards for these types of magic by saying that they're really focal points. So for example, when you use a candle or a green candle in a prosperity or an abundance magical ritual or a spell, you're using that color correspondence and the flame itself as a form of energy. You're using that to hone your focus, to calibrate your mind, to kind of be in a mindset that is very of that variety. You are trying to get yourself in the right headspace. You're trying to get your focus, your intention to be very clear in the physical world in a visual sense. You might light incense that have a correspondence to what you would imagine to be very prosperous or abundant in some regard. So the same applies to the cards. Really, where the magic comes from is within you. We're using, for example, these cards to hone your focus, to exemplify your intention, and in that way, hopefully your spell will be more successful because your intention will be more clear, your focus will be honed, your ability to then center your mental energy and to raise the energy within yourself will be heightened. And that's how we're using the cards. And I think that is basically the same thing as lighting a candle, creating a sigil, all of which are kind of getting at the same thing at their core. And so to me, using the cards is the same concept as using a candle, as using a sigil, as lighting an incense, as using certain crystals. They can all be used in a similar way because they are all honing our focus. They're all centering our mind and our energy and helping us to raise certain feelings, emotions, desires. So we're going to get into that. I have 5 decks that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to use examples of certain cards to outline how you might use them, how I go about using them, and why. So we will start with the Rider-Waite-Smith, actually, and I think this is going to be one of the only times that I say that the Rider-Waite-Smith is well suited for a certain activity. I'm always a proponent of the Thoth. You guys know that I'm quite biased, but in Prosperity Magic, I do find that there is a certain level of specificity and practicality that the Rider-Waite-Smith can provide with its scenic pips and its scenes in general. And so I have a few, of course, I have a few examples. Of course, the coins or the discs or the pentacle suit in any deck is going to automatically, I would say, engender feelings of prosperity of the material world. So those more mundane senses of prosperity and abundance. So we're going to go through a few examples like that first. One of my favorites and one that I use quite often is the 9 of Pentacles. And for me, this garden, this lush, luxurious feel of this card between the yellows, the serene face, the greenery, the wealth. To me, this card is one of financial independence, of personal financial prosperity through effort and through work. And so I often use this actually for spells that are particularly geared toward reaching a certain level of financial independence, or at least stability that is it's lasting, it's fulfilling to a deeper aspect of myself. So it's not just monetary gain for the sake of gaining. It's more monetary gain and independence for the purposes of feeling as though one has accomplished something. And so I really enjoy this. I think that the scene lends itself to that feeling. When I look at this, I feel positive, I feel uplifted, I feel a little bit luxurious, and there's just something about it. Between the bird, it almost feels like she's sending off a messenger or receiving something in return, like nature's in her favor. And so this is a great one, I think, for financial independence and for fulfillment through personal projects. And so I would recommend using this, keeping this out, focusing on it in terms of those types of spells or magical workings. I have also lit green candles, and I will sometimes even draw out the Tree of Life, and I will write a little sort of incantation on the spell. This is on one of those glass, what are they called? The longer candles. One of those glass candles, and I will write on it, and I will have it burn, and I will hold this candle or put it nearby. I will really focus in on this and repeat an incantation, and to that effect, I'm hoping to gain this. And I think this is probably the card I use the most, actually, in my own life for that sort of abundance and prosperity. Next, I'll quickly go through a few other examples I have here. If you're really looking for more, maybe you have a family at home, or you're just trying to start a family and you're in the newer stages, or you're looking for more stability in your home life, the 10 of Discs is great. There is the depiction of a family all together. They look quite happy, they're well established. There's a sort of dynasty at play here, this old wealth of love and prosperity and financial and mundane abundance, but also it seems like there's an abundance of emotions and well-being and love here. And so if you are somebody who is involved in a family dynamic and looking to stabilize it, to have some prosperity in terms of that interconnected synergy that goes on within a family unit, I would definitely recommend this card here. We have the Page of Pentacles, and the Page of Pentacles reminds me of a youthful soul. They remind me of a student, more of an artistic student. So this is somebody who wants to find beauty in life, who is looking to find and see more beauty in life. So this sort of abundance and prosperity would be not necessarily aesthetic in nature, but it would be seeking out experience. And so if you're looking for an abundance of experience that is beautiful and profound and worldly, I would say using this card. So if you feel like maybe you're in a rut and you want things to liven up a little bit and you want to have these really beautiful, awesome experiences and enhance that aspect of your life, I definitely recommend using this card. I've used it and I really enjoy the effects that it can have. I just love the way that the youthful, almost naive, but in a really nice sense, how this page looks at that disc with wonder. And it may look simple to us, but they can clearly see something in it that we don't. And so for that aspect, I would highly recommend this card in that way. Let's see. We, of course, have the Four of Pentacles for more of that. There's a sort of stability there, but there's also this, it almost reminds me of savings. So if you're looking to really actually buckle down and stop spending so extraneously and to have your savings amount to something, so I think this is great for having very specific goals in a monetary sense, or for looking to sort of curve, if you're a spender like me, somebody who's not as good at saving, this kind of card might be great in a spell. These are just my opinions, but I hope that they can inspire anybody watching this who's looking to use the cards in this way. I find that these are almost like, the cards are like a pack of sigils, and the way in which I work with it is, what kind of feeling does this card engender in me? What do I see when I look at it? And of course, if I see and feel a certain way looking at the card, it's going to lend itself to magic that parallels the meanings and the feelings. Of course, we have the Ace of Discs. This to me is a little bit more abstract, so if you're looking for general abundance and financial abundance and all of that, this would be great. If you don't have a set goal in mind, definitely recommend aces because they're infinite in potential. Next we have, of course, there's the Empress. She feels more external to me. To me, a lot of the time the majors they're less from the inside out and they're more from the outside in. I don't know if that makes sense, and I don't think that's always the case. But I would say if you're looking for your world to reflect a state of abundance, a perpetual growth, I think that this card is great. It's actually not one I go for as much, just because it does feel so broad and so vague, but that's kind of the point. So if you are looking for your outward life to reflect what it is that the Empress embodies, highly recommend using that card. There's the Three, which to me is more of a collaborative. So if you're in a work project, if you are in a work environment where you have many people that have to connect and network and get something done, I would say that this is great for seeing a project like that to fruition. There's this Six here, so this I think is great for relationships where you're looking for a symbiosis, a reciprocity, receiving what it is that you're giving out, or giving out and expecting something in return. I think that this is great for that kind of magic, if that makes any sense. Or if you feel like you're putting in a lot of work but not seeing return on it, I also think this is great because it is about receiving. To me, this is the card of symbiosis and reciprocity, so I think that it's great for that. We've got the Eight here, and this is one I think that's great for motivation. So getting yourself, maybe even trying to draw in opportunities to be able to work. So if you're looking for employment, if you're looking for a job, I think that this is a great card. We've got the Seven of Pentacles here, and for me this is great for, I would say, proper analysis and assessment. So bringing things to light that you hadn't seen that are important to know in terms of your long-term success and prosperity. There are sometimes things that we don't see, they're right under our nose, and they need to kind of be brought into view. So this, I think, is great for perspective in terms of prosperity and abundance. Of course, we have other types of prosperity and abundance. We have the Magician, who I think would be a great way for you to tap into your personal power. If you're looking for an abundance of sovereignty, of authority, of agency in your life, the Magician, 100% the Magician. We have the Nine of Cups here, which is also called the Wish card. So if you're looking for, I would say, more of an emotionally fulfilling, an abundance of emotional fulfillment, as in your actions reflect what it is that you truly need and want in life, and to have those things sort of magnetized to you, that's when I would use the Nine of Cups. We have the Ace of Cups, and abundance and prosperity in terms of emotional well-being. I think this is great if you're kind of having a, kind of feeling a bit down and out, and you're looking for something to recharge and re-energize your emotional sphere, if that makes sense. We have the Three of Cups. I think this is great for friendship. So if you're looking to be a bit more social or to find that more co-creative, but in a more fun way. So to me, this is a prosperity spell in terms of personal relationships, friendships, potentially family members, also looking to maybe be a bit more social and interconnected and understanding and empathetic. So there's a lot of things I connect with this card that I really love. We have the Two of Wands, and for me this is about an abundance of personal, I would say personal power. So not as much where the Magician was that sovereignty and agency. This is very specific passion and power to be put to use. So if you have something in mind and you need to really muster up that energy, this is the card I would use for it. We also have the Star. I think that she is great for an abundance of healing and prosperity in terms of health. So I associate the Star a lot with bodily health as well as mental health and heart health. But really, for me, if I'm feeling sick or like something's coming on and I really just want to get my mind in the right place and try to do what I can to mitigate the effects of any ailments, the Star is it. So that's for the Rider-Waite-Smith, a few examples. Now it's interesting because the Thoth to me has a very different feeling, and I would use different cards and they would mean very different things for me. So we have things like here. For example, I showed the Four of Discs in the Rider-Waite-Smith, and that was more about saving very specifically. But here in the Four of Discs in the Thoth Tarot, to me this card equates more to security and safety. So if I'm looking for an abundance of safety, if I don't feel safe in my everyday life, if I feel fragile and like everything could come crashing down, this is the card I'm going to turn to for a spell that is going to hopefully ensure more safety and stability in my life. Whereas the Four of Pentacles in the Rider-Waite-Smith, to me, was a little bit more miserly. It was about having specific financial goals and getting to them and not spending so much. This is about very literal safety in life and feelings of stability and safety in a more mental way, if that makes sense. We have cards like the Eight of Discs, which I showed before in the Rider-Waite-Smith. And in the Rider-Waite-Smith, to me, it was more about employment. It was more about opportunity to be able to do what we want in terms of work and to have some sort of return on what that is. Now with this feels more to me like a moment in the sun, a moment of growth, seeing through something and having it prosper. So having what we currently love to do and what we have been working towards amount to something. So not necessarily finding employment, but more so making what you've got become a lot more. So amplifying, multiplying the efforts of any given project or endeavor. We have the Devil, and I think that the Thoth Devil lends itself more so to, I would say, power over the material world. It lends itself to feelings of fun and release, whereas I think that the Devil in the Rider-Waite-Smith feels more of feels like entrapment. It feels like being held back, where this to me is more of that Capricorn energy where we see the material world and hopefully are able to master it. And so if you're looking for prosperity in terms of being able to have the freedom in your material life, I think that this card is great. We have the Prince of Discs. For me, he is a card of the card of stability, but more so in work. So if, say, well, especially in these economic times, work is kind of weird, you want that stability, I think he's the card to go for. If you're looking for something to feel like you're on the right track, you want long-term and lasting success, he's a great card to work with magically. We have the Sun for prosperity and abundance of happiness and clarity. So if you are feeling muddled and confused and foggy, I think the Sun is a great card. It's the card of clarity for me, as well as the card of happiness, of course. We have, I really like the Adjustment card, or in the Rider-Waite-Smith, what would be Justice. For me, this card in the Thoth really equates to a more karmic sense. So if you're looking for balance, an abundance and prosperity in terms of balance in your life, you just feel like things are off, that you're maybe not getting a fair shake in terms of events and how they're turning out, this is the card I would go for. If you're looking for fairness in your life and you feel like you've been treated unfairly in the past or continue to be, this is the card I would turn to. And so that takes us through some of the tarot cards. Now, I also want to speak to astrology in this sense. So I have 2 decks to show. I'm not really going to go through many of the cards, but if you're working with cards in abundance and prosperity magic, I think that looking at astrology is a really great way to enhance. So you might pull one of those cards, you might have a candle lit, but I think understanding, for example, there are days of the week that correspond to certain planets, and those planets mean certain things. The moon is always in a different sign every 2 or so days. We have the sun being in its sign at any given time, and the various planets are, of course, in their signs. So I would recommend looking it up. Maybe if you have an ephemeris, turning to that. If you can get all of these correspondences going, it's a bunch of layers of things that are going to work in your favor. So you have your focus through maybe one of those tarot cards or an oracle card. You then have maybe a candle or an incense or a crystal or all of those things going, and then maybe you want to turn to astrology to add a little bit more oomph. And I think the astrology cards are great for reflecting what is the current signs, the current planets in the given signs. So maybe you're looking for, I'm trying to think even what, maybe it's more of this commerce where you are looking for more of that financial gain. So you might, but if it's more of this network communication type thing, you might turn to Mercury. You're going to want to look for certain signs and planets to be certain ways. You figure out what it is, the exact signs and placements that you want. You pull out the cards that reflect that, so that way you can see it in front of you. I think that there is something to the fact of being able to see something exemplified and visually in front of you. So it's one thing to understand that maybe the moon is in a certain sign, or that Mercury is conjunct with Venus, and maybe you know that in your head, but to lay it out on the table is another thing, and it's going to help you focus more. You don't have to waste mental energy and take it away from the goal to think about that. If it's on the table, then you know it. It's there. You can look at it, and you don't have to remind yourself continuously of it. So laying out astrology cards can be really helpful. There's a bunch out there. I really like the Living Wheel astrology cards. And I also really like the Holistic Astrology cards by Carnizor. To me, those are my 2 favorite astrology decks out there. They're just really beautiful, and there's a lot of variety in the cards and being able to lay out what I need to do. So there's that as well. And then the final deck I wanted to mention in terms of prosperity and abundance magic is the Alchemical Tarot. Now, this is where I want to delve into the ideas of using decks and cards and imagery that reflect your own belief systems. So if you are into Celtic magic, picking symbols and signs and cards that have myths on them that you are very familiar with, or a god or a goddess that you are very familiar with that is tied to your goal, is going to help you. So, for example, maybe the Thoth isn't for you if you aren't familiar with those signs and symbols. They have to mean something to you, and so you want to pick decks and cards that have those lessons, those principles, those themes that you can resonate with, that you don't have to think so much about, that you already have very definitive connections to, and you know what they mean, you know how they feel for you, and so they can perform and serve as a focal point for your energy, for your intention, for your desire. And so the reason I pulled the Alchemical Tarot out is, if you are, for example, familiar with alchemy and you know the alchemical processes, and you're looking, for example, to achieve something, but the idea of the Philosopher's Stone and alchemizing and the steps of the alchemical process are something that you're very familiar with, potentially laying out cards that exemplify that is going to be perfect for you. If you know nothing about alchemy and you don't care to, and it's just not on your radar, then why would you use a deck like this? It doesn't make sense. The imagery is not going to connect, and the feelings, the emotions, the intentions, the focus is all going to be diminished. So I think one of the biggest takeaways is to pick cards and imagery that resonate with you, that you are very familiar with, that you have background in. So if you are more into Buddhism and you follow more of a Buddhist path and you're looking for clarity of some sort, turning to those images, finding card decks of oracle or tarot variety that are going to reflect the concepts and history and myths and legends that you're familiar with are going to be a lot more helpful for you. So I think that that's a really important note to kind of keep in mind. I think that there's a lot more to prosperity and abundance magic than just financial gain or career acquisition and living spaces, but I do think those things are really important as well. I, for one, can definitely resonate with needing and performing magic for all of those things, but I also think it's nice to go above and beyond and to look at prosperity and abundance in terms of yourself and your growth, your spiritual growth, your relationships, your love for yourself and others, and experience in life, because there is so much more than just the material. And I think when we find and can strike a balance in abundance of the material and things that are a little bit more beyond the material, abstract and deep and inner, when we can strike that balance, that's when we get that true abundance, that true prosperity, because the material is going to feel empty without the other things, and the other things are going to be ungrounded and not really, they're not going to have a place as much if you don't have the foundations of that mundane to back them up. And so both of them are really important. I thought I would just hop on and share a few examples and my thoughts on those things. I'd be very curious to know what decks and practices you use for abundance and prosperity magic, what that looks like for you, what types of prosperity and abundance magic you go about, if it is more of the mundane for you, if it is more of the high magic or inner variety. I'd be curious to know. Subscribe and like if this was of interest and fun for you. I hope you are all well, and until next time, bye.